Yeah, that's what we were just hanging with Noel. You know Noel Salas.
I've never met him, but I know him for sure.
Yeah. So
I know his work.
He's awesome.
Is he?
Yeah. Well, he's just like you, like the platform that he has invested so much time into. It's freaking awesome. And the community has grown as a result of it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So was he filming an episode?
Yeah.
Nice.
On the G-Skate. Yeah.
Nice.
So, and Pat and Tanner were there too. So
oh, wow.
All three of us. And it was ideal because like we launched the board and it came out with the video that was in Hawaii, which was, you know, pumping surf, the whole team. But the board was originally intended to be surfed in, you know, shoulder high, crappy waves.
Right.
So it was like, you know, out there today it was knee to waist high. So that was ideal. In terms of versatility.
Are you doing more than one session or does he get it all done in one day?
We just did one session, but
okay.
I mean, he works on those things, I think, for a bit of time.
Got it.
He builds out quite a nice product, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I know how funny. So talking about changing media landscape, we're recording. I'll give you a proper introduction in post.
Soundboard.
Thanks. But talking about that, yeah, exactly, that ever-changing media landscape. It's like, I remember when he started, and it was so niche, and I'm like, oh, that's cool that somebody's like a self-starter, and I'm a self-starter and all that. But in the last decade, Surfer Magazine went away. Like all these other, legacy media brands, which we kind of pointed at and looked up to and gleaned so much information of, were losing market share, and we were kind of gaining market share along the way. Ben Gravy, you know, guys like that I'm just like, oh, that's a cool little niche, are now the guys.
Yeah.
You know?
And truly are.
It's bizarre. And sadly enough, Surfer Magazine going away, like that's a bummer, but we filled a lot of that market share. And it's interesting if you actually look at the numbers, like Surfer Mag only printed, 100,000 copies at the height of their heyday, whereas those videos on YouTube are getting millions of views. So they're actually accessing a larger audience.
Yeah, that's wild to think about. I mean, yeah, the scale is incredible, and the reach and access on YouTube and all those platforms is like mind-blowing.
Totally.
And it's cool that people have access to authentic storytellers or people who are just passionate in their communities about what they're doing, and they can connect with them or learn from them or share in that experience with them. And so I feel like it's much more like you have those relatable access points where people can identify with this person or that person or just want to get an insight, and it's much more direct and to the point rather than like going through a third party, you know, publisher and magazine, and it's curated. You can, just have a raw and live feed on your YouTube and people can kind of understand exactly what, there's no middle ground there.
You're right though. There is more entry points is really what it is. So it's, people are comfortable getting in. When I was first getting into surfing, it felt intimidating. Even going into a surf shop, I was just like, oh man, these guys are cool. And like, I don't speak the right language. I'm afraid to ask for what I want because I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly, all of that stuff. There was but that rite of passage, of course, indoctrinated me with important stories in surfing. And so I knew who was who and kind of what was what and how to behave in the water, etiquette, things like that. Whereas I feel like, honestly, we'll have podcast listeners that have been listening for a couple of years, and I'll have an email interaction with them, and it's apparent to me that they're not aware of who Tom Curran is or Aki or something like that. And I'm like, how have you been into surfing for a couple of years and not know who that is?
Yeah.
But it's because they came in through YouTube and just kind of skirted around those history lessons. They don't subscribe to Surfer's Journal, maybe,
Yeah, it's like you said, there's such a heritage and depth to the cultural piece of a magazine and kind of the legacy that they hold. And when you read those, you possibly can find the link further back into the culture and the history. Yeah. But now now it's just so fragmented that, you're picking up bits and pieces, and whatever you are exposed to, you end up kind of falling into that category. Like you said, maybe not knowing who Tom or Aki are, but, at a certain point, you can look at it two ways. One, I really value our culture and our history and where people have been and what they've gone through to get to where we are to enjoy it. But there is also a certain beauty of people not knowing it because they're coming at it from a fresh vantage point. And I feel like sometimes you do get jaded if, you've been exposed to it for so long, all this stuff, you're so dense, you're so weighed down, you can be, that it's kind of refreshing. And, for us traveling to third world countries or going to places where surfing is the access to the culture and the history is pretty limited. And they're just going out there and surfing for the joy of it. And without any real knowledge of even maybe what it is that they're doing. To me, it's really gratifying when you encounter those experiences and you're like, oh, that's what it's about. That's 100%. What I should be doing. And, you learn about the culture because you're inspired by it later on. But, as long as you have those simple basics of joy and excitement to go do it, I don't think it's necessarily wrong if you don't know the history right away.
When you put it in those terms, that is the purest form. Yeah. Having zero awareness of context and culture and just doing the act itself is the purest form. Yeah,
and it's so fun. It reinvigorates it has reinvigorated my stoke. When you spend time, you're like, oh, this is sick. And they're hooting and you're hooting and everyone's like, oh, this is what we do it for.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, surfing is such a funny thing. Like I just drove 3 hours down this morning and it was like 1 to 2 feet, gutless. And I was able to surf with my brothers and a couple of friends and it was fun. It was tiny lowers, but I'm like, damn, this is pretty fun. Like, I just sat in traffic for 3 hours and it was like, that sucked. But then like, this is, fuck, we're lucky to do this.
It's easy to get jaded. So
yeah,
that's a great reminder.
And that's natural. I don't think it's unnatural to get jaded.
Well, perfect. That's even though we've been talking for 6 minutes, that's where I wanted to start this conversation, was related to jaded. In fact, so I'll go to my notes. You and your brothers, I suppose, but we'll just talk about you, seem truly happy. Which is rare. And it's refreshing for all the reasons you just stated, but what do you attribute that to, that state of mind?
Let me think about that.
Yeah. Take your time.
I think just gratitude, an overwhelming sense of gratefulness that we can have this opportunity, growing up in Southern California, having access and exposure to all these cool things. And San Clemente is a great community to grow up in, especially for something like surfing that we were really passionate about. So, and our family was loving and supportive and gave us the tools to kind of go out into the world and kind of experience it. And then also tap into the energy of it. And I think, all of those good and negative things that you experience in life have just left us feeling grateful, and sharing it with the next generation of kids and youth water safety programs and all the stuff we've done. I think the more you do those things, you look back and go, wow, we're even more grateful because this is dope. And you get to share it. Pat's got his kids and we see it passing to the next generation. So, happiness is a weird word because I feel like that's kind of temporary. It's just more like joyous, or I'm not sure, but it's kind of a softness, rather than a calloused feeling, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So that's the way I would kind of describe it. I mean, obviously some people are like, dude, you're always smiling, or you're so positive all the time. Like you must never have a bad day. But, we all experience those super lows and highs, but then, you're navigating life like all human beings. And, I think having those foundational tools that were provided to us from a young age have allowed us to cope with things and experience the world and communicate and just be present with people. And I think that's taught me the most about, how I got here.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, Donald Brink actually said to me that the person I should interview is your dad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Pops. He would have some stories.
So tell me about him. Tell me about your parents, because I agree with what you're saying. Like, yeah, there's so many people that have the privilege that you're talking about, but they're still cynical and they're not happy all the time. But I think you keyed in on it, which is the way you were raised. It's probably attributed to your parents. That attitude of gratitude has to be, instilled in you. And so tell me about your parents. Who are they? How did they end up in San Clemente?
Yeah, Tom and Nancy. I'll give you the whole story. My dad's grandparents came from Lithuania during World War II. They were chased out of Lithuania, had to completely, I think it was the Russian, there was some dynamic there, and got on a boat in France and ended up in Ellis Island. did that whole thing. And then my mom was from New Jersey originally, from Irish and Welsh background. And she fell in love with California. She got out of New Jersey probably, I think, around 18 or 19, right as soon as she could. Came out west, and they were working in restaurants, my mom and my dad, and they met, got connected. And then we were born in Del Dios in San Diego, which is like inland kind of San Diego. My dad was already working in the surfing industry. He had a surf shop called Ocean Snow, which is like a classic, I don't even know. It was like a surf snow shop at the time. And that ironically, they were, they carried vans back in the day. So you had some stories, and he got into, that shop ended. I can't remember what year, but then he started repping for Locomotion, and, Locomotion was coming up in the 80s. There was like all those guys like Buttons and Tony Moniz, Pat Rossman was shaping for their boards, the whole crew. So here we were at that point in time. My dad moved to Capitol Beach with my mom, the whole family, because we wanted to be more central for his job to go to San Diego and Los Angeles, kind of find that middle ground. And it was cool. We have such vivid memories of, growing up, all the catalogs of Locomotion. It felt like our first surf mags, like we'd be looking through, like see shots of the guys. And I remember Pat Ross and all the reps would come and stay at the house. Jack Meyer, Lewis Ross from the East Coast. And it was just fun. It was like a family.
Yeah.
We were part of the surf kind of culture, I guess, at that point, that access point for us. And always at the beach, going to Sano, had the West Valley van, going to Baja. It was pretty close-knit kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know, but there's three of us, and we lived in a little house and just had fun. I don't know. It's just kind of like that,
Yeah. That's an ideal lifestyle to grow up in.
I guess so. Yeah. At the time too, it was just, I don't know, Capo Beach had a really cool feel.
Mm-hmm.
There was like that, like surf roots. And then we grew up and then we moved to San Clemente in 4th grade. I think because maybe the waves were a little better than Capo. And growing
For
up
listeners who aren't local,
yeah,
it's only a 10-minute drive down the freeway. It's still very close.
That's true. I know. But the time felt a little further,
in the Westphalia, maybe it's 15 minutes.
That's true. But it was interesting too. Then you go into San Clemente, and there was a whole different, subculture. It was a bit more progressive minded, and there was a bit more of a radical approach to the wave riding and the philosophies. And it was amazing to be so close to that. And we were just surfing all the time and going to middle school. And at the time too, Short Coast Middle School, we were the first part of like a surf team at the school. So that was like the very beginning of when schools started integrating surfing into the program. So, we were just around all the time, and, mom and dad made sure that we always did our homework. But, at the end of the day, we just spent as much time in the water as possible.
Surfing T Street and stuff.
Yes, T Street, State Park, and
who was shredding back then? Was it Archie and
Jim Archie, Hogan, maybe? Chris Ward was on fire. Shane Beshin, just like holy crap. And Lost had their whole team there, so it was a bunch of kind of underground dudes who were just absolutely blowing doors. Like you pal out and just go. I mean, the guys are ripping.
Yeah,
and a couple like local legends too, like Benji Severson, who actually is head of the board riders here now. A lot of those guys, they fostered our development and just kind of helped us, see the future. It was happening right in front of us.
It was right when those Lost videos were hitting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Right there. And, it was just, lowers was just, guys were blown up. I mean, I remember being super young and seeing guys like Joe Cremo and Justin Madison doing, stuff that Chippa Wilson's doing now.
I know.
And that was like, I don't even know, like he would like kick flips and twists, and it was crazy.
People didn't even know how to, I guess they still don't know how to appreciate it really. You know what I mean? Like,
no, yeah.
But back then it was just such a novelty. I remember watching those videos and just being like, well, that's cool, but whatever. Like there's no chance I'm trying to do that when I paddle out next time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just so freakishly different.
It was freaky.
Yeah.
And it was.
Those guys are creative though, to even think that way,
At that time. I mean, they were so far ahead of the trend.
Totally.
And
so far,
it was
decades.
And I feel like San Clemente at the time, just because maybe it's just because we were there to see it, but it felt that way. It felt like, wow, you're staring at the future before the future's even happening.
Mm-hmm. You don't even have
all the characters
Yeah.
embodied that, right? You have, Chris just absolutely surfing out of his mind. I love watching Wardo surf, and Beshens and Lopez's would spend a lot of time there. Yeah. Corey, he's amazing.
Yeah. I'll go back and look at some of that Chris Ward footage when he was 16, 17, surfing lowers, and it's still mind blowing how much power he had, and like those like blow tail reverse through the lip, like grabbing the rail, just completely controlled, but it's like explosion out of control, but completely in control of everything, and just power and rawness.
Crazy he's so young in those videos.
16, dude.
Yeah. It's nuts.
Yeah, he was like a grown man at 16. The first time I saw you guys, you and your brothers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this. It was in a magazine, probably that's on the shelves here in the library. And it was like a little sidebar, like an inset in Surfer magazine that was like, I don't know if they ran a contest and local kids get to go surf with a pro, spend a day with a pro thing. And I feel like it was Taylor Knox.
It was Taylor Knox. I
good.
vividly remember that.
This is deep in my memory banks. And so I was really struggling to remember if that was the concept of the piece and if it was Taylor Knox.
It was in Surfing Magazine, and I vividly remember it because, growing up in San Clemente, obviously you have the luxury of the magazines at that time were right in the backyard.
Yeah.
And so creek and all this and that, you go shoot and surf, and, there would be the classic photogs, and, they'd be shooting their stuff. And Flame was a really good family friend of our dad's. And so he was like, hey man, like he was shooting Taylor, and that was down in San Diego. And he's like, come hang out in this. And so we were just like, holy crap, like this is so exciting. I remember just like so excited. I had an epoxy quad at the time. I can't remember who shaped it, but I was so baffled. It's like this pintail little bump pin quad. It was so cool. And here we were with Taylor Knox, and Taylor, if you look at the photo, he looks like he's in his mid-20s or like late 20s. I don't even know. He's ageless anyways, but it's funny because now we're good friends with Taylor, and we've had all these fun surfs and experiences, but we're linked together from that memory a long time ago. And it's just crazy.
Were you 12?
Honestly, it felt like I was 12.
I mean, you weren't.
We were.
It was pre-puberty, I feel like.
It was definitely before. Yeah, I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Again, I have not seen this magazine since.
Yeah, I wonder if there was surf shots. I just remember this one photo of all three of us sitting with Taylor. Like,
exactly.
Like a group shot, like kind of like buck teeth, and just like, this is so cool.
Right. And wasn't it just like a little side panel?
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't a full article, right?
No.
Yeah. So I read that, and I'm just like, those are the luckiest kids in the world.
Yeah.
Like, how did they get that deal? But the reason I think I remembered it is because shortly thereafter, I started seeing your guys' names in the magazines more frequently. And then I was like, oh, well, those kids had access somehow. Like maybe their dad works in the industry or something. That's why they got picked for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's
the Flame connection.
Of it. Yeah. And Larry was, rest in peace. It was amazing. And the photos and really seeing him work at Creek and the ethos that he brought to his craft, and, front lit, tight shots, action, this, bang. It's crazy because in our careers, obviously shooting photos is a big part of it, and going on photo trips, and just understanding those values and maybe what the photographer is looking for or what would make a good composition of a photograph was kind of cool. I never really thought about that influence.
Yeah, his work, for listeners who aren't fully aware, that his work ethic was really what set him apart. You know what I mean? Like just showing up every day, doing the work, and obviously composition, lighting, all that stuff is very important as well. But his work ethic, I think, is what he was known for well. So that's interesting that you guys would glean some of that.
It's funny. I didn't think about that, but yeah, I mean, it probably rubbed off on everything. And actually, it's funny. I do remember as well. I was taking I think in 9th grade, I was taking a photo class, and Larry was like, I have to send my prints. It was like, you had to reach out to a mentor to like kind of give you constructive feedback on, or kind of help you. And I remember shooting this roll of photos, and Larry was like the guy I sent my photos to give him, like, get some feedback. And I would just remember there's like, dude, there's a tree coming out of this guy's head, this. And I still think about that when I shoot photos now. I'm like, how do I not get the tree in someone's head? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny. Yeah, that influence from a young age.
I know you don't remember what board that quad was, but in general, who were you getting boards from at that point?
Noah Bedreau.
Oh, wow.
Because he was under the Locomotion kind of crew at that time. Pat Rawson, we got some boards from Pat. Like, I mean, it wasn't like we were getting boards. And, you know, you get a board every 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was like Tony Staples, San Diego.
Don't know him.
Kind of guy. And then just our dad's old boards from Locomotion, like Chuck Andrews. And he had all these Hawaiian boards because obviously Locomotion was a Hawaii brand.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it was cool. It was fun. And, you know, it wasn't like we got a bunch of boards, like I said, like we kind of just, it was funny now seeing the Groms, you know, we were on like 6.2s, you know, and I guess that worked if you're growing and you can grow into your board, but it was not how it is now, where you have boards that are much more refined for, you know, people riding 4'2" boards and surfing pretty tight, crazy.
Yeah. Do you remember your first sponsor?
I do remember our first sponsor, and it was Spy.
Wow.
And they paid, I think it was like $33 a month. We were so psyched. It was awesome.
I feel like it's a good paycheck back then. When you're a kid, you don't have any expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool. I mean, we're so grateful. Like there's been so many brands that we've had the chance to connect with, and like you said, people that work in the brands, and, you know, people that maybe I didn't even have an interaction with, but supported our journey through any different thing. And that's it, like adds up to that total cumulative gratitude, you know?
Totally. First surf trip, like first properly sponsored surf trip. Do you remember that?
Honestly, I don't even think I went on a proper surf trip sponsored. Until I was like 19 or 20.
Was it Hawaii or?
I mean, we would go to Hawaii for sure. Maybe that was it. I think we stayed at the O'Neill house, and that was pretty cool. You know, maybe that was it. I do remember we were in junior college, Patrick and I, and we took the first semester in class, and, you know, we were like, the domestic tour was just getting kicked off, and we had just come out of the amateurs, and we were kind of like, you know, maybe the pro thing would be fun. It would be cool if that worked out. So we gave it a crack in domestic series, kind of like how it is now, actually, where you could, I think there was a couple events in New Jersey and this and that. And then, so we were going to school basically at Saddleback Junior College from like Monday or Tuesday to Thursday. You know, you get it all loaded up. Then you fly out Friday and then come back to school or, you know, fly back on Monday and then you go back to school. And we're like, wow, we're getting some results out here on the road. Like, this sounds awesome. Let's freaking go for it. So we took the second semester online, and then we took our finals. I remember the psychology final we were taking, and we were staying at the Pipe House, and it was pumping waves. And Pat and I were just sitting there going, just get through this thing. Like, and we were just like taking the final. We're just like, God, we never looked back. And
good.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
What were you going to do with a college education?
That's a good question.
Did you have a direction?
I was always interested in arts and music and writing. I love writing. So yeah, I mean, it was, you know, when you're 19 years old, I don't know if anyone really has that foresight to understand what their life will be like. So I think it was just kind of, you know, valuing education. But I think the world has taught us so much, just as much or more than I could have ever dreamed of getting in any sort of education in the classroom, you know.
How did your parents feel about that decision to not go back to school?
They were supportive. I mean, you know, I think they just want the best for their kids, but they were stoked. I mean, what a cool opportunity, you know. And it's funny because now being 37 and still being I guess a professional surfer, it's like the longevity has been amazing, you know. And at the time, you know, 18, 19, those pivotal years where you need to make a splash and get, you know, that global attention and, you know, get sponsored and do that whole thing. we kind of were underdogs. Felt like that all the time. Kind of really just had to grind for it and work and prove it to ourselves and prove it to other people that we were capable of belonging on the stage and everything. I feel like we've always had to work for it. And so they saw the work ethic they instilled in us from a young age to just, hey, if you want it, you got to freaking get it. Like, you got to grind it. Like, no one's going to give it to you. Like, and then too, especially when you're halfway across the world in a country that you don't speak the language, and your rental car is broken down on the side of the road and you got to make it to your heats, and here's like fully adult males that with no priority, and they're coming to eat you. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you have to work, and give it hell, So I feel like, yeah, it was just, that became the way we applied our passion for learning. It was just a different canvas. We learned how to exist in the world and learned how to compete and learned how to navigate those pressures and strengths and this and that.
So the plan at that time was to chase the QS?
Yeah, seemed like.
And who were your sponsors? And obviously they supported that effort, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so
it's amazing because Channel Islands, we've been on Channel Islands surfboards since we were 14 years old. So that was awesome. And so they've been through and through. We were riding for O'Neill at the time, Vans shoes, and I think that was about it. Jack's Surf Shop. They've supported us for a long time. So it was cool. Patrick and I hit the road first, and that was freaking eye-opening. Like you said, we started on the domestic series, which was rad, and then, we go out to the global stage, and it was a whole different ball game in a good way. Mm-hmm. And then Tanner came along 2 years later and just jumped right in the car with us. And, we weren't going to have it any other way.
Yeah.
I mean, he was, at that young age, you could tell he had the skill set to compete and bring in some big scores. So,
did you feel like you didn't?
Part of my existence was always wondering that same question. But I thought that brought the best out of me. I had so much heart and soul into it. I guess in the amateurs, I was able to win the national championships and at lowers, and that was like a huge accomplishment for me. Because, like I said, like we always felt kind of like the underdogs, and you got to swing in, give it hell, and that was like extremely awesome. I love competing. I love the passion that it brings out, and yeah, I don't know. It forces you to dig deep.
What was the distinction though for Tanner? You mentioned.
Well, yeah, he just, some people, and you see it on the tour because I'm sure you watch quite a few events. Like some guys, under the circumstances of pressure, elevate, and they're surfing out of their minds, and it to a level where, like, even if you're free surfing, I don't think they could access it.
Yeah.
So like that extra gear, I felt like I was not able to tap into, but I think for Pat and Tanner, they were both able to go there, and make those clear decisions and peak moments when you had to in the finals and up against a heavy opponent, like those critical small decisions and holding your composure. That's how you make the quantum leaps.
Yeah.
I was like, I ended up, I did the tour for 4 or 5 years and had a freaking blast, and was kind of grinding the gears a little bit on the format and scoring. And it wasn't the language that was natural to me, which was totally fine because I made so many friends on that tour and culturally got to experience places that blew my mind. And if we're talking like young 20s, having a freaking hell of a good time, like people go to college and get that out of their system, like it was loose, you know what I mean? Like it was freaking wild. So that was good fun. And then it helped me on my path. It's a part of me.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Do you remember, was there a flashpoint moment where you realized that wasn't for you? And was there even an opportunity to have a career without it?
Yes, totally. 100%. It was, there was a year where Patrick and Tanner both qualified, and that was the year we had that heat together at Sunset Beach.
Okay.
At the end of the year.
I don't remember.
Yeah. It was
all three of you?
All three of us.
Okay.
And it was cool because Tanner needed to make that heat to qualify.
Okay.
It was really fun to have that moment all together in the water. It was sick. And it was cranking huge. And I was like falling way back in the ratings, and, my heart wasn't into it. And I was, spending a lot of time in Hawaii at that point and falling in love with Sunset Beach and falling in love with Pipeline and understanding like, dude, there's some big hollow waves and maybe that's better suiting my skill set and my body profile and just like my mentality and my mindset. Like maybe that's what I'm intrigued by. And so hanging out with people who also value the same things and, you know, seeing Pipeline as like a religion and like literally investing your heart and soul and spirit into this thing. Like to me, that was intoxicating. And like, I wanted to surround myself with people like that. So, you know, I spent time with guys like Nathan Fletcher and Reef McIntosh and Danny Fuller and all of those guys at that point in time really nurtured my journey into riding hollow reef passes in Fiji and Chopu and Indo, wherever it was just like, hey, let's hit it and let's go all together. Magazines were still popping off at that point. I remember having the conversation with Vans, like, hey guys, like I know, you know, we've been on this journey of competing, but like, dude, this is where my heart's at. Like, I feel like if I can give it a good crack, like I know I can make headway. And it is vulnerable. Like you're leaving something super secure that you can just keep going on and you're just going to stage left and jump into the unknown. And it's like, if you fall on your face, then so be it. And Vans was so supportive. They're like, awesome. But they weren't necessarily like, there wasn't like, hey, here's your itinerary or here's this. It was like, awesome. Let's see what you do here. Like, where are you going to go with this? And it was like, freaking sweet. Thanks so much for the support. I love this opportunity. And, you know, again, like realizing from a young age, you have to work hard and you got to dedicate to it. It was like, man, you just keep applying that same effort and passion for something that you're interested in. And it's allowed me, I mean, gosh, I don't even know how long ago that was, like over 10 years ago. And I'm still doing it in a way that's, you know, changing and navigating those changes. So, you know, I feel really fortunate.
Yeah. As you're talking about it, yeah, I feel like that might be the moment that I think of. You guys were all one brother set.
Yeah.
Like one identity. The Hobgoods, I think, had that too for a long time. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, oh, they're the Hobgoods. They're the Gudauskas. And then there was kind of a distinction in my eye anyways for like individual personalities emerging.
Yeah.
You know, and choosing different paths ultimately.
I think that's healthy. And I think that's a challenge that maybe a lot of family people go through that are so closely aligned. I mean, especially being a twin.
Twins, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially doing the same thing and being compared together, you know? I mean, it's an interesting dynamic there. And I think having that sense of independence and self-exploration independent of my brothers was amazing. It allowed me to grow into who I am and who I became. And I'm not sure if that same evolution would happen if you're staying in the same comfortable lane of, you know,
totally
going with the flow.
So I want to talk more about that relationship with Vans. And I know it's changed, like you said, but I guess kind of at this point, what do you expect of them? What do they expect of you?
It's amazing. We've been with Vans for over 20 years too. And huge shout out to, you know, Scott Sismus for believing in us and then also supporting our changing landscapes and navigating those different paths. As it exists right now, you know, we're pretty a part of the brand in terms of just supporting their initiatives and contributing as we can and just being a part of it, you know. So it's
it used to be a very clear exchange. You know, it was like stickers on the boards, get shots in magazines, a couple video parts, and what the surfer would expect from them is obviously financial support.
Yeah.
You know, so that was very clear, but now it's much different. You know, there aren't magazines necessarily anymore. So is there an expectation for you to maintain a certain public profile?
Yeah.
I would say
make
video pieces,
right?
Like make video pieces, certain number of trips a year. Like what?
It's like, hey, I think people know when you're doing your thing enough. You know what I mean? Like there's like an element of, you know, being responsible for, you know, being on the program, not wasting everyone's time. And so, you know, I guess having a certain amount of relevancy is good, you know, or just even pursuing things that you're passionate about. I think everything else will come as a byproduct. And Vans has been great because they understand that, right? So they go, hey, like pursue that weird little niche thing you got cooking. And I think it could manifest into something beautiful. And it could be something that can lead the brand into a different direction or X, Y, and Z. You know, I mean, growing up with Vans, and their two main mentors is Nate Fletcher and Joel Tudor. And like between those two, like seeing their views of surfing and the surfing industry and surfing design, board design. And I mean, dude, you can't get more open and extreme than those two in terms of their application and then also their innovation, right? So I guess as long as we understand those ethos and dedicate ourselves to our work, you know, I think Vans is stoked. And I think, you know, we always try and represent Vans in the highest light and just to appreciate what they do.
Yeah.
The Van Doren family. And so, and supporting other people on the team if they have a project coming out. And then also, you know, we just came out with the G-Skate film. We're going to have a couple more throughout the year. You know, social media is big. Like we were just talking, obviously you got to have that going. The CI Pro movie was another thing. And then you know, every year and a half, I try and come out with a personal film. So I'm working on another one that will hopefully come out at the end of the year, which I'm psyched on. And then Tanner, he's working on a cool thing with his YouTube thing. He's starting to grow like on the outreach, and he's got this little thing called Finders Keepers, and they've released one of them, and they've got about 4 in the works. So it'll be a kind of a fun little collection. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, it.
Yeah. I love, first of all, the way that they've managed their athlete relationships.
Yeah.
Like getting behind somebody. I hear like in the tech world, people who are building like a tech company and they're bringing on all this financial investment, and the financial investors, they always talk about investing in the person, not the idea. Right. Yeah. And so Twitter, the original concept for Twitter was actually a podcast player.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, but it morphed, you know, the idea morphed. And so he originally, Jack Dorsey, got money to make this podcast player. And so that he had to turn to the investors at some point and go, hey, that's not working. But guess what? Social media is going to be the next big thing. And those investors had to be smart enough to recognize this guy knows what he's doing and my money's in him, you know, and he will figure it out. And so I think Vans has kind of applied that same philosophy where it's like Joel Tudor, Nathan Fletcher too, you know, they're outspoken.
Yeah.
Good. We believe in them. We believe that they believe what they're talking about. And so we're going to support that. There's no amount of outspokenness that can have us not believe, you know what I mean? Like we're behind it. Go do your thing. And I think that empowers those people to be the best version of themselves, you know, and they almost those guys have, like you said, they're cultural definers. Like if you stay in the lanes at all times, you don't really change anything. Those guys have shaken it up and changed the direction. And that's more valuable for the brand's identity and awareness than anything else could be.
Absolutely. And it's very authentic. I mean, these guys are living and breathing it. And,
totally.
And they're, you know, they have been for their whole lives. And so we feel grateful to have that proximity to those guys and their friendship and their mentorship. Yeah. Like we call them all the time and ask their perspectives and this and that. And they still, it's been amazing. They still help us, you know, grow. And so it's a really good relationship there.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
Yeah. And it keeps growing, you know?
Yeah. Well, so how much do surf trips factor into your current life, professional surf life at this point?
Not as much as I would say pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
I think that was like, you know, at this, like I said, you know, as you get older, different things come into your life. And, you know, when I was in my mid-20s, I don't think I was home very much, you know, and it was insane. You just go from trip to trip to trip, and it was insane. And there was all this opportunity with the magazines, and, you know, you go on one trip, bang, you get Transworld Surf, Surfer, and then surfing. You know, if you get on the flow, you get the output going. And that was really exciting and thrilling. And now, compared to that time, it's just more refined, you know, trying to get on waves that I'm curious about, maybe a board design that I really want to try in a certain area. So yeah, I guess it's more targeted than it was, and for good reason. You know, got a wife at home, and it's just, cultivating, our family and everything like that is satisfying. It gives you that soul power, that soul juice. It kind of makes you go out and be your best. At a certain point, you want to continue to evolve, or I do at least.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so obsessed with like trying so many different, lenses of surfing on, you know what I mean? Like big wave thing, or extremely, small waves, or big wave, like everything in between, right? I think diversifying the way I'm seeing it has broadened my perspective and allowed me to appreciate surfing in such a vast way. But it takes time, and then also it takes the willingness to step away from something, maybe if as you're ascending, to return back to that, that state of humility where you go, I'm a kook in this aspect. Like, let's try and figure out what is this, and like how to ride this. And then maybe it all comes together later on in the future, and you can apply everything I've learned and kind of tie it together. Like, can my approach in big wave surfing change as a result of riding a 14-foot box board by Tom Blake? Maybe not, but it's fun to think about.
Yeah.
For me, at least.
Yeah. Which brings us to the G skate. It's a perfect segue.
Yes.
Everything converging into one concept. How did that whole thing come together? And is it a collaboration between you and your brothers?
Yeah.
It's a three-way design?
It is a three-way design.
Four-way with Britt, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, it was really cool. I mean, Channel Islands was so amazing to give us the opportunity to really kind of play around in the space and design a board that is exactly what we want to ride. And I basically, I love old things and going slow, and like I found an old longboard at the dump, and it's got this huge defin on it, and I've never gone slower in my life, but it taught me how to ride the curl and unlock different areas of speed in the wave face. I love old Volkswagen vans, and not getting up to 65 miles an hour. So like, I just love old things, basically is what I'm saying. And so I was kind of interested in old skateboard designs, like Tony Alva and Jay Adams, they used to ride from, in the Z-Boys and all that. That outline is so beautiful. And when I close my eyes and look at a shortboard, and in my head, I'm like, God, that outline is exactly what I want to ride. Like if you're looking at flying across a wave face, like, man, that looks sick. And the way that those guys are riding it, all like tweaked and flowy and skatey, like that's how I want to surf, moving from weight on the back foot to front foot, that transition, and flowing and carving. So that was really the impetus. And there was a book on old skateboards, and I took a photo of a board on my iPhone, and I was like, man, this thing looks sick. And so I actually took it to Kinko's and blew it up to 5'8" to scale how big I wanted it.
Oh my gosh.
And then I brought it home, put it on my living room floor, and cut out the board, and I rolled it up, put a rubber band on it, and I walked into CI, and I was like, Britt, man, I got it. I've been thinking about something. I might be crazy, but I really want to explore this path. Like, I think this could be a rad board model. It looks insane. So we put it on a foam blank, and we just carved it out, and then we just started playing on it from there, and really modifying it. And I wanted to work with Pat and Tanner on it too, because I feel like when you're building a board for a commercial brand like Channel Islands, it's really fun for me to get more people excited about the board, and more people like finding joy in the board and taking it out and making it applicable to a lot of different styles,
right,
and wave sizes and textures. So like, I bet you if Patrick and Tanner and myself came together and took all our collaborative experiences and point of views, maybe it can apply for a wide sweet spot for people, whether you want to surf more progressive or more down the line or whatever. So that was kind of the goal. And it basically turned into what it is now. And Britt, and bless those guys, because it took us a long time to get to where it is. So yeah, I appreciate their patience.
Describe that first skateboard.
I'm
sure
it was like a wide point forward. I mean, it looks so similar to what it is now.
Okay.
Except for the tail, right?
Okay.
It had the big wide tail block. So it kind of resembled a bit more of like a mini Simmons.
Yep.
kind of thing. And so, which, you know, essentially if you're looking at a skateboard, like that's kind of the kicktail or whatever. So like pop. And, you know, we just were feeling like that just had too much width in the tail area there to really get those tight turns in the pocket. Of course, you're flying through the flats and skating all around. But with our approach and wanting to actually access high performance with this board, then we kinked in that thing, and that made all the difference. And that's really the same bump that's on like the MTFs. Remember those ones that Reynolds really popularized? I think it was Rob Machado's original one. Oh, okay. And then similar to the Tommy Twin that he has too, it's a similar wing. We were playing around with straight twins, but we really felt like that stabilizer gave it that extra sense of drive to really kind of accelerate it. And in association with the board, we're also releasing a set of fins. And we got a chance to design that fin. And as I was building it out, we were playing around with the original AMT templates. I'm not sure how experienced you are with playing around with different fins, but it was really cool because the AMTs are on a specific angle. They're splayed out to a nice degree. And we were playing around with all these different kind of variations of the angle with the fin development. And I was like, man, when I stood on this one, I was like, damn, this thing's got so much lift. I was like, what's cooking in this thing? And it turns out the little bit more angle on the splay just gave it so much life and lift and ability to go from toe edge to heel edge real tight in transition. We added a little more rake to it and give it a little more radius and drive. And yeah, I don't know. So
you explained what that initial design looked like, skateboard design. What does the final G-Skate model look like? You kind of described outline right now.
Yeah.
But what about everything else? What about rocker?
Yeah, pretty low rocker profile.
Okay.
Single to double to a little bit of V off the tail in terms of concave. I would say a pretty straight outline, you know, and then it kinks in. The real kink for maneuverability is right after the two side fins. And so then it pulls into a bit of a narrower tail.
Okay.
But usually, like we were just saying today, like when you're standing on it, you're standing just at the end of that wide point, or not the wide point, but like the end of the wide before it kind of kinks back in.
Got it.
So you get that drive.
Would your back foot be above the fins then? Where are the fins?
Right over the fins.
Right over the fins.
Right over the front fins. That's where I like to stand. That's where I like to get a lot of juice.
Yeah.
And if you want to sit back and stomp it, you can kind of.
Right. I have not held one yet. I was supposed to grab mine last week and I didn't get a chance, but it looks like, so the wide point, the front has a lot of volume in it. It almost looks like a foam. Fish.
Yeah.
Just from looking at it. And then the back obviously gets super narrow and high performance, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it an accurate assessment?
Yeah. I mean, it's designed to have a lot of foam in there.
Yeah.
You know, and also to fit in tight pockets, you know? So yeah, it's kind of an accurate, I think the wide point's maybe an inch above center. And yeah, it's definitely got a lot of foam under the chest, so you're not going to sink that thing.
Right.
And we really wanted to emphasize that get up and go kind of speed, especially if you're surfing in a place like Huntington or, you know, Trestles or something like that. Like that feeling of like my first pump, wow, accelerate.
Yeah.
Speed, joy, happiness, smiling. People are hooting for you.
Yeah.
You know, you're not like slamming, trying to squish a cockroach and beat it to death, you know.
So ideal surf for listener who's going to add that to their quiver?
I would say like knee to just over head high.
Okay.
You know, I mean, in the video, we're surfing it in like Macking, Hawaii.
Yeah.
But that was just like exciting to see how it handled max speed and to know that it can control it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like you want to make sure things are well vetted and it was cool. You know, Mikey Febs got to surf on it and seeing everyone's different applications of their style and approach. Imai was surfing great on it, Reef Hazelwood. And really what's so interesting about that video was that those are our boards actually. Like we just were like, we only had a couple boards. And so we were just giving them out to people to shoot on. And so every board that you see in that film is the exact same dimensions. It's just applied through different filters.
Amazing.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
You know, interesting.
How tall are you and how tall is the G-Skate that you ride?
I'm 5'11", I think, and I ride a 5'6".
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like I was talking with Patrick today, like he rides his shortboard like 5'11", and same for me, like 5'11" shortboard, and then like, you know, like a rocket wide or something like that, or a happy every day, I would ride a 5'8", And then this would be just under that, like 5'6", and then maybe a Bobby Quad, which is another board that they make, probably 5'4", 5'2".
Okay.
You know.
So maybe the equivalent to what you would ride a fish, or taller.
I don't know. It depends on what kind of fish you like to
Okay.
ride. What do you like to ride?
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Moving on from surfboards, what is Positive Vibe Warriors?
At this point, well, let me give the backstory on that. It's been 10 years since we created it, my brothers and I. It started just as a way to, I don't know, keep a positive mindset when things are challenging on the road. And it's just fun, you know, for us. Say it to each other when you're deep in the abyss, you know, keep the head on straight, and just rally through some times. And it ended up, we were in Jamaica. I can't remember the year. It was probably 8 years ago on a surf trip. And we always wanted to go to Jamaica. Just, I don't know, it's just intriguing with the culture. Turns out there's some amazing waves. We're hanging out with the Wilmot family in Bull Bay. And there's this crew of kids and that was surfing amazing. You know, just as good as anyone else. Ripping, performance, airs, whatever you want to see, these guys were doing it. And that was a long time ago. And they were just putting the boards together again and again and again, right? You got these young kids doing airs to the flats. I mean, these boards can only hold it so much and break in. And so they just, moral of the story is, don't have access to equipment or boards, no surf shop, no dinghy repairs, anything. Billy does it basically at the house. And it's amazing to see his mentorship of the whole community and just kind of fostering the Jamaican Surfing Association and all that stuff. So we left that trip and, you know, we were just like, man, they treated us to such a great cultural experience, like trip of our life, you know, like how can you just say thank you? Or how can you, you know, obviously we knew the boards were struggling. So we're like, we came home and it was just right when Instagram seemed like it was just kind of, I didn't really know what it was, you know, the power of it or the reach that it had. And so we were like, hey, let's see if we can, you know, make a couple flyers on Instagram and grab a couple boards to ship down there. You know, we thought we'd get like 10 or 15, maybe 20. And it turns out, you know, we made flyers and put them up in surf shops, you know, up and down the coast. And, you know, I think it was a collecting for a month and we got over 200 surfboards and our house was completely inundated with boards. I mean, we all lived together, Pat, Dan and I at the time. And it was like our front courtyard was like, I'm not even joking you, like a sea of surfboards. And there were old, some of them were new, and there was wax. And so we de-waxed all of them. I can't even tell you, took so long. And we were just cracking up. But it was great because we were so stoked and filling up this U-Haul and then driving them up to get them shipped in the shipping container. It was an experience because we didn't obviously know what we were getting into. You collect these boards. We thought we were going to send them down in board bags.
Yeah.
You know, and now we got to look into shipping logistics, cost, X, Y, and Z. And so we were like, like, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? So that's when Positive Vibe Warriors became a foundation and we were able to raise enough money to pay for the whole operation, right? The shipping and, you know, getting all the boards down there and all those costs because it was pretty darn expensive. And so it became kind of like a vehicle for us to pursue things that we're, I guess, philanthropically inspired by. And that's, you know, we've gone on to do 3 board drives, raise over 1,000 boards to these communities, give back over $100,000 in youth water safety programs. That means like junior lifeguard scholarships, Bragg Safety Summit scholarships, stuff that we feel passionate about. And it was just amazing to have that portal to give back to. Since, you know, I think especially after the pandemic, you know, less travel, less ability to kind of reach globally, we started really looking more local at that point in time. So we still support San Clemente Junior Guards. Bragg's been huge, which is the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group, which has been hugely meaningful to our lives. I mean, it's taught us so much and heavy stuff. And
it's incredible.
Yeah. But so now, you know, we're taking all of our experience with these board drive things and you're seeing the boards come in, you're seeing how they go into the communities too. Cause we would go down to Trinidad and go to South Africa and you're hanging out, distributing these boards, surfing with people, seeing how the boards work in the programs. And, I think one thing that came to our minds was like safety is paramount. Like people are learning to surf, and here you are giving them this like, foiled out 6'10", things, sharp fins, like, whatever. And so we were like, maybe we can get more refined and targeted. And I think that started us thinking softboards are the answer. The softboards are the solution to making sure people go into the ocean, have that experience that they can kind of feel that success, but also do it in a safe and meaningful way. And how can we do that in a conscious way? So we started producing softboards. We're getting all our boards made right here in the USA. We started a softboard brand, which is Positive Vibores, and that's what it's turned into. We still do philanthropic work, but again, it's more targeted. We're more focused on having a business that's successful as well, that can create sustainable boards, more sustainable minded, that are effective, making sure junior guards can access them and they're durable. They're not going to get 100 pounds heavier by the end of the season, and make sure they work well. And then, like right now we're doing a board, we're sending 40 softboards to Juju Surf Club in the next couple months. So those will be distributed through Africa too. So it's different. It's a different look, but that's kind of the evolution of what Positive Vibores is.
Are you still doing hardboard collections?
We don't. I mean,
because I totally understand the evolution. If there was a way to allocate those hardboards towards intermediate surfers in those regions, because it's like we have a surplus. All of us in our garage have a surplus of boards that we don't ride anymore.
Totally. I think what we learned? There's infinite people who are doing the same thing, right? So the people are going, board drive sick. And so you're seeing them, and we're getting people hit us up all the time. Like, hey, I'm doing a board drive for this. Like, can you get the word out? So I do think that those platforms are existing, and there is a home for all those boards. It's just about getting the word out and making sure that people know that, hey, you can go donate your board, because, like at the end of the day, what's the most sustainable surfboard? It's the one that stays in the water longest, right? I mean, there's all that talk of, that's possibly one way to look at it. And by giving a board a second, third life, you're doing pretty good for a board.
Totally.
But I think for us, it was more, going to communities, specifically NGOs, which are working for maybe surf therapy programs, or people who are just accessing the ocean for the very first time. And so that's where our heart is, and that's where our passion is. And that's why it kind of developed into what it is. And it's a business now. So we're super excited about that. It's basically my brothers and I and our dad and mom who are just kind of helping us. And it's fun. Like, we hit the shops and get on the road and open accounts. And, it's really great to have that learning still going.
Yeah.
And really, surf shops are the heartbeat of our industry. And, the people who run surf shops choose to run surf shops, and then people that work at them. Yeah. It's freaking fun to connect with them, connect on the G-skate, connect on life. Everyone's just a person out there navigating life, and surfing is one of the things that we do. And so it's really fun to have that as an access point, but then you get to talk about all these other things, human things.
Yeah. You no longer live in San Clemente.
That's true.
Why'd you, I don't know if you want to state where you live now, but why did you, what was behind the relocation? You're synonymous with San Clemente.
Well, I love San Clemente. I mean, it's in my heart, we were talking earlier, surfing trestles. I mean, it's amazing how consistent that wave is, and the culture there. It breeds that surf mentality. I mean, I don't know any other way around it. It's like, you live and breathe it. I met my wife, and she was living in Ventura at the time, and we're living just inland of Ventura, and she loves it up there. And so, Channel Islands is up there. So I want to keep growing too. We were in Hawaii for a little bit, which is a special experience. And I think there is something to be said about pushing your comfort zones. You can stay in the same place, which is nothing wrong with that. It's amazing if you love it. But I do think for me, it's been a cool growing opportunity to be like uncomfortable, not know anyone, plug in, and just bear witness to how communities exist. And there is an ecosystem. It's like funny, if you show up and surf, you go on a road trip, I'm just going to plug in and surf, do my thing. There's actually an entire ecosystem behind that lineup, and there's locals and there's people who have stories, and, they're excited to be there or whatever. That's where they go. So it's just kind of interesting.
It's culturally very different
Yeah.
in San Clemente.
Yeah, no. And it's been great. I think for me, it's just like, I'm into humans and like the human connection. Yeah. So like that sense of vulnerability that you get by being out of your comfort zone and in someone else's home, you act different, you know what I mean? And so it teaches you different things. So,
how did you meet Anna?
Kind of through, mutual friends. Like she had been doing a lot of trips with Chris Burkhardt and his team at the time. And I was like, wow. And I was too, at the time. I was doing a lot of cold water trips and, going to Iceland and Norway and Russia. And all of a sudden I'm like, who is this girl who's been to all the same spots? And it's pretty, limited amount of people who have visited these places. And so, yeah, at a certain point, I was like, I got to meet this girl. So I just, wrote her a message and said, let's go surf.
Slid into the DMs.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And we surfed Rincon first date. It was funny. It was awesome.
Did you hit it off immediately?
Yeah, because I was just so curious about her stories and her experiences. And it was dope. Like here's this hardcore surf enthusiast, has a small business, just loves surfing, grew up in surf, working in shops like Mollusk, and just had a different take on surf culture too than maybe I had exposure to. And it was great. Surfing, I'm not sure how it is for you or other people, but for me, it's really a nice experience to go share some waves with her and to have that moment,
Did she feel the same way about you immediately?
No, I don't think so. I think, I don't know. Yeah, she was loving it, but I think I was just like, who knows? I guess we're together now. So
well, yeah, I mean, eventually she came around. What was it that convinced her, do you think?
I think, I don't know, actually.
It's weird to think about, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't know, but I just remember she was like, man, your pants are so wide. What are you doing?
Wide?
Yeah, she was cracking up. I mean, and I at the time had these like gold Ray-Ban, like weird glasses. And she's like, whoa, this guy's freaking out there. Like, I don't even know. I think
she was already thinking of how to rework your style.
Yeah. And that's
a classic wife move. That's how you know she's in.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, she has rubbed off on me. It's funny, but yeah, I was, I'm colorful. I don't know what the right word is, but I'm like expressive. So I think I blew her mind a little bit at the start.
Yeah. Well, good for you. That's exciting.
Yeah. No.
When did you guys get married?
2 years ago. Okay. Well, 2 years this July.
Okay.
So yeah.
Amazing. Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Been a journey.
Is she on the CI team now? I see her riding a bunch of CIs.
But I mean, we share a garage. So
okay.
but she rides anything, and she's, man, yeah, just the exposure working at Mollusk and, the board designs coming through at the time, probably early 2000s. What a cool education,
Well, I think that's reflective of earlier we were talking about all the different entry points into surfing.
Yeah.
And so now you see everybody riding anything,
Totally.
Because when I was getting into it, probably around the time you guys were getting into it, actually, it was like, you just ride pointy thrusters. Everybody did the exact same thing, And so surfing was so homogenized because we all wanted to be Kelly Slater for a long time, So now it's like, it's nice that there's not just 3 magazines and 5 brands and you're all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I mean, I'd love to hear your perspective on if you think, how much further do you think we can go?
So much further, dude.
Well, on a normal thruster in the way that it looks now. I mean,
not much further then.
Because I'm like, man, it is to me the apex of performance surfing, right? You have guys on the CT who are, like look at Felipe, the precision, the power, the torque. It's freaking mind blowing on the carves. But then I feel like, from my experience, riding these different boards, like that board I found at the dump, or a fish, or a mid, or whatever else, ASIMs, whatever you want to throw at it, it helps you look at the shortboard in a completely new way, right? And access speed in a new way. So I don't know what's going to be the next quantum leap. But I love playing in that space because I think they all affect each other, but it's such a curious point. Like I'm wondering, I don't know, it feels kind of, I don't want to say the word stale, but because they work the best, but I don't know. There's got to be something more out there.
So I've thought about that exact thing, and because I've heard the argument made that, well, the good thing about everybody focusing on trying to be Kelly Slater riding pointy thrusters was that style of surfing evolved rapidly because everybody was doing this one thing, right? And I thought about that argument. I understand the argument, but the flip side of that is, well, that's only based on one definition of what is high performance surfing.
Yeah.
And so what the judges, let's just use the CT. What the judges are looking for on the CT is such a narrow thing. And so if Mikey Febb, when he was on tour, were to paddle out twin fin, they're not even going to know how to score that. It doesn't even fit in this paradigm, you know? But then the question is, well, who's to say that that's less performance than the thruster surfing? There's no real way to define that. So if you open that aperture beyond that and start thinking about, well, what if everybody focused on what Greeno was riding?
Yeah.
And they scored that high. And then the entire world got into trying to do that. What would surfing look like today? It'd be entirely different. People would be doing barrel rolls, you know, potentially, or something. And that would be high performance.
Yeah.
But we went so far down this one path that unfortunately, the females surfing on the CT is judged based on a male criteria that was defined, you know? And so people are commenting, oh, well, the females aren't as high performance as the males. And it's like, well, no, the criteria was defined based on the male. So of course they're not going to be able to be doing what Felipe is doing.
Yeah.
But we never let Steph or whoever came before pursue their fullest expression on their own path and supported it and valued it. And you know what I mean? Because otherwise maybe Felipe would be judged on Stephanie's ideal under that different paradigm. You know what I mean? So I think the reality is there's so much more exploration to do with all of it. And the defining it as high performance is a very limited kind of definition. And holding everything to that definition, I don't think is a fair way to judge everything else.
Yeah. Exactly kind of how you described I almost think that by scoring things to a criteria, it's almost limiting the potential for that next level growth. From my point of view, I think, and one of those being maybe just the term flow or access to flow. You think of like those people who've been able to tap into that, and I think that access point of flow could be where the most progression in board design could come. And I think that will be the next generation after, because I don't know, it's difficult when it's boxed in, and I understand that the progression of tricks might be improving and diversifying and growing, but I don't think most people even understand it's just only going to get more separated from most surfing people. Totally. You know,
it's unrelatable.
It's going to become out there with nothing wrong with that. I think it's fun to watch, but I think when I think of flow, guys like, even you look at guys like Rasta, any of those kind of people who like, just, you think of flow, and I think unlocking the full line, I think that'll be where the next level of like progression for board design comes from.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you're always going to have, progression, like errors and stuff. That's going to be something too. People might make heavier or stronger boards, but I think for most, like something that's relative to most surfers, I think that would be the most applicable.
The couple of Instagram clips, it might've been before the G Skate was released, when it was like in R&D, and the couple of clips that you released where you're just tapping into a fluttery high line. You're not showing anything else. You're not showing the bottom turn or the turn that comes after it. It's just that high line little flutter thing. That's what you're talking about. Like that type of flow that's what we want to feel, kind of. And that's what is undervalued, not accounted for in the judging even.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's not quantifiable. but it is freaking fantastic.
It's
to feel.
Well, there's a fantastic feel, and there's a direct line between Phil Edwards finding trim, and you doing that on a tiny board.
And I feel like it could be a gateway for people finding more of the waves, speed, and energy in the future. I don't know. I just think about those things. Yeah. I mean, if you think about disengaging from the wave face, how do you maximize the wave face if you're not disengaging from it? Right?
Yeah.
That means you have to ride it and understand the nuances of it and find the energy and when to hit it and when to run. And it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, it is. What is the meaning of your Instagram moniker?
Yeah, it's Dane Gudauskas, I think. Is it? Yeah, it's funny. That was like, again, I made that when I thought Instagram was a photo filter. Like, honestly, I totally
when it first started.
I know. And it's funny because now it's still there. But I think it was like, I don't know. There was like, I don't know. It was like some Nostradamus or,
okay. That's
like, it's like the Oracle, I don't know, whatever. And I just thought it was funny because like I'm always talking story with the boys and making these kind of bold claims. And
got it.
So, yeah.
Are they specifically predictions about the future? Because isn't that what Nostradamus is known for? Yeah.
I mean, not always, but I was just, I thought it was funny at the time. And I was like, oh, this is classic. It's a photo filter for sure. No one's going to see this. Yeah. That's people think it's my name or something. I don't know.
Yeah. This might not be accurate, but you seem more fit at 37 than ever before.
That's probably true.
What's behind that?
I think, I don't know, understanding that you are aging, right? And taking care of yourself a little bit more. I love like food, and cooking, and like, I'm not like a freak nutritional wise, but I love just like, I know I feel better when I'm eating like whole foods, and I know what I'm cooking and putting in it. And to me, it's fun. It's like expressing yourself, like, hey, what's in the fridge? Like, how can I whip up something? And so, I haven't eaten red meat or chicken in a couple years either. So I just eat fish and just like, I don't
know. What else do you avoid in your diet?
That's kind of it, really. I mean,
sugar, dairy,
I don't
alcohol.
Eat much sugar, I would say. But yeah, it was funny because, that gal Liz Clark from Tahiti. She's a friend, and she was doing that. Plant-based March, I think.
Okay.
And it was funny because Anna, when I met her, she was a vegetarian, and I would eat anything under the sun. I mean, I was the number one candidate for a chili omelet. You know what I mean? Like at a diner, we're talking heavy duty. So it was funny. Like I was like, like how are we going to navigate this? Because like, and that came up. And so we did it. Obviously Anna was already doing it, but I was like, this is kind of a reason for the season to try just not eating meat. And I just felt pretty clean. Like my engine was burning pretty clean, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. And so, yeah. And then I love fish. I can't stop eating fish. So,
okay.
So yeah. And I feel good. And maybe it'll change down the road. Maybe I'll need to like, get that steak, but I don't feel the need to.
You don't miss it.
No.
Yeah. What about exercise? Do you do anything other than surf?
Yeah, I do yoga, which I love. It's really nice. Just go on nice walks, stretch, breathe, and swim, and prone paddle. Kind of just surf stuff.
Yeah.
Like beach runs. I love that because it's nicer on your knees, I feel like.
Yeah.
But yoga's taught me the most in terms of just kind of like the philosophy of longevity and just how your body feels. It's for me, it's about awareness, right? Like, so it's like taking a body scan and just checking in with what's going on with your body and how it's feeling. And yoga has really allowed me to tap into that feeling and then go from there, like, okay, like I want to get a little bit, more exercise, vigorous stuff, but checking in first base level and make sure things are loose. And that's my main priority, especially getting older. Like, like there was a time when, like you said, in the it's funny. I do look at photos. I'm like, man, I'm definitely in better shape now. And I think it's a mix of diet and just mindset.
But you're not doing any weight training?
I don't do any weight training. I try to keep it just body weight.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, just what feels good. I'm not under a ton of mentorship from people who have a lot of knowledge of those things. So maybe I'd feel more comfortable, but like I would feel pretty uncomfortable going to a gym and just like throwing up a couple dumbbells or something, because I'm not sure I'd be doing it right and I might hurt myself.
Yeah,
so,
it does feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's cool. Dude, there's so much you can do out there that
I know
you don't have to feel,
I don't want to be indoors.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Do you prone paddle?
No.
Man, I got to tell you, that's fun.
I know.
It's funny because people go, that sounds like torture, but it's really freaking therapeutic.
I know.
And really, if you think about surfing, how often are you really standing up and riding the wave? Most of it is paddling and positioning and, endurance.
Are you doing like downwind runs and stuff?
Catching I'm a
lumps
torture magnet, so I love going upwind.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll come back. I don't do huge runs.
Okay.
I was doing it a lot more when I was in San Clemente, just the proximity to where we were living. And I love that feeling.
Yeah. I've heard great things.
Yeah.
I just haven't taken the time to do it.
Yeah, it's cool. You'll get there.
Yeah, I will.
It's evolution.
Yep. We've got a young kid in the house, so that that occupies all my time.
Oh, yes. You're just maximizing every little free window you get.
I mean, if I get to go surf, that's enough. I can't stack on new.
Pat's in the same position.
Yeah.
And I see it and I go, wow, you guys really are effective with your time. You have way better time management than I do.
I was going to ask you about yoga. How many days a week are you doing yoga? Or what's your yoga regimen?
Well, I was doing it at home a lot during the pandemic. And just because a lot of studios were closed. And I kind of just started getting back into going to studios, and it's fun. It's like a different kind of like experience. Like
pushes you harder. I mean, you take it more seriously, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny because, I starting to play around with yoga and longevity and those things. Like I read this book, The Tao of Health, Sex, and Longevity.
Oh yeah.
I think when I was like 22, changed my life. I was like, whoa, this is like maybe the way I should be thinking. So I started playing around with yoga and, just for the benefits of stretching and stuff. And then, a friend was like, hey, like, do you do that? Like, Savasana or whatever, that final thing, like when you're resting. And it was funny because I'm like, let's give it. I just like feel a stretch. And he's like, that's kind of the whole purpose of why you're doing this. And I was like, oh, and then I started learning and wow, it's just a way to loosen your body up, to feel things and have a bit more sensitivity in the world.
Yeah.
And understanding that as applied to different aspects of my life, whether it's just doing dishes or communicating with people and just having, so that to me is like, wow, I'm like, yeah. So I go, if I can, I have, I've only been going, like I said, going back to the studio because now we're in one place longer. We were kind of moving around to a lot of different places. I was doing it at home, but now I'm trying to go like 3 times a week.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Do you do hot yoga?
I'll do anything.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be, but it's kind of fun. But, like a sauna too would be cool. That like a sweat, like, damn.
You get pretty deeper stretch too.
Yeah.
In the hot room. Talking about feeling your body though, one thing that I've identified certainly in more recent years, like the older I get and the more my body is falling apart due to aging, the bad habits, it's like you don't feel your body when you're engaged in the bad habits at all. Like if you're eating fast food all the time, let's say, you don't realize how bad it makes you feel. And then if you go a few years without doing it, one meal from Taco Bell, you're just like, oh, I feel awful, or if you're drinking all the time, you're just like, you don't realize how bad. And then if you take a month off and you have one beer, you're like, I feel awful. And I don't sleep as good. And so all of those bad habits almost like blockade your ability to really tap into all those things that you're talking about,
Yeah, it's mindfulness and awareness. But I will say it is funny because I think I remember it was a quote from Laird Hamilton where he's like, you can't be afraid of like eating a McDonald's hamburger and making sure that your body can still hold up to it. Cause you might be away or something. Like, I guess the goal is not to be so pure that you can't like engage with the reality of life, and traveling and maybe there's only a McDonald's and you got to freaking grind up because you don't know when you're going to have food.
Right.
And I love, when I'm traveling these places, like I'm like an open book. So like if they got some wild stuff that they're cooking up, like put it in me and we'll see what science experiment happens. You know what I mean?
What surf media do you follow nowadays?
All of them, I guess, mostly. I mean, I love surfing. So every website, I subscribe to Surface Journal and, I watch the WSL comps. And if I'm there and have the time, I don't know, surfing just is cool. Instagram is great. You can follow some interesting things that aren't being featured in the main media. It's cool that Stab's making those videos. I think their media landscape they've made a really nice contribution just in terms of entertainment. The videos I feel like are fun to watch. Mm-hmm. The Stab in the darks and the Stab highs. And so I appreciate that. I love looking at the weather maps. So I'm always on that. And then, I'm always excited when the Surface Journal comes in the mail. Mm-hmm. There's some great reading.
The cover shot this month. Have you seen the new one with Nick Von Rupp?
Yeah, it's awesome.
That cover shot's insane.
It's great.
I love when I peel that envelope open and like that reveal, of like what's on the cover this month. And that one, I was just like, wow, that's an insane shot.
That was a great shot.
Yeah. They
do a good job. And, it's nice to hold and to look at photos. And I think it's great.
Something I was going to ask you about. Oh, filmmaking. You're talking about Stab's contributions to video content. Let's talk about your own filmmaking a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Are you actually behind the camera on these projects, or what? What's your role?
It's funny because yes, in some points we are, but on the recent one, demo tapes, Tanner shot all the water footage for that, and so we just live it and love it, and a lot of times you don't have access like to camera twos, this and that, so you get creative, and then that's kind of cool too because you put your own spin on it. I guess the recent films that I've done over the past, I have had a huge part of the editing process and sewing them together and making sure the storyline's kind of authentic and to me, and kind of the messaging that I want to kind of hopefully give to the viewer. And I would say that they're always a little bent, from the mainstream perspective. My goal is to be a catalyst for conversation in terms of maybe showing people that they can feel comfortable in being uncomfortable riding a board that they think doesn't work or looks funny, or maybe it's not the right board for the conditions. Like, I love giving people the permission through my videos to go, fuck, if Dane's going to try that, like, I might try that, because I think surfing needs to get pushed. And I think it is in so many ways, but that might be how I can contribute to the conversation,
Can you talk about the project you're currently working on?
Yeah. I mean, it's just a continual evolution of my mindset, riding boards that I've discovered over time. And like, we're here in the Surfing Heritage Museum and we were talking earlier, this really fostered a lot of that, like, design curiosity. Walking in here, you see boards from Tom Blake, old Hawaiian Olos, and having the proximity to Donald Brink has been amazing because, we can have conversations that are completely different than the ones I have at Channel Islands where, that's more performance oriented. And these ones are like, whoa, this is freaky weird piece of history. Like, what is that? Like, what does that look like in the water? What would it look like to peel one of these boards off the wall and go surf it? And furthermore, how can we keep that conversation moving forward? Mm-hmm. Like, can we modify it? Can you adjust it? And what is it just going to feel like? That's kind of interesting to me. So yeah, basically this new film has a bunch of different boards that I've, board designs that I'm curious about. And so it's mostly my application of surfing in different waves on these boards. And I haven't really narrowed down the storyline, but it's, they always kind of like a little bit tapped into the cosmos. So, yeah.
So some of the boards that maybe you've published on Instagram that you had a session on might be on film in these or in this.
It's possible.
Okay.
Well, yes, some of them, but then some of them, no. The 14-footer, I'm not going to have for this one, but it's just more of an example of the mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you.
It's fun.
What's your next surf trip, and what was your last surf trip?
I think I'm going down to Cabo with my wife, which will be fun. We're going to surf in the sun. And then my last trip was Hawaii, and that was awesome. We were there for the Vans Digital Triple Crown, and it was just great spending a month there or more. And we're staying right at Sunset Beach. This is like my favorite wave, and the waves were freaking nuking the whole time. It was humongous. And I was scared shitless some of the days. And we got that big outer session on the day of the Eddy that was humbling and just amazing. So yeah, and to get to share that with my brothers was sensational. So that was my last trip.
Does Anna have any interest in big wave surfing?
She loves it. We were surfing when we were like spending quite a bit of time in Hawaii. She was loving Sunset Beach. But I think she is a little bit more into like longboarding and stuff.
Yeah.
But she will charge. Like I would say, like some days you're like, oh yeah, damn, girl's on fire.
Yeah. We started out talking about happiness and your parents instilling that in you. For listeners who maybe didn't have the privilege, maybe they didn't have parents instilling it in them, do you have any methods to cultivate happiness in one's life daily?
I feel like this has just been my own observations and experiences, but I think understanding that we are all struggling and we're all navigating and we're all in it together. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you feel so alone. And I think once you open yourself up to that exposure and that vulnerability, you can start to grow your gratitude. And I think for me, that's been my evolution. Like I wasn't always, it takes time to grow it. And I can always think and replug back into the big source of love and energy when I think of all of us together, fighting for each day and making it happen. And some people have it way worse off, and they're still in the same mindset of trying to get up, do the good thing, and do the best they can.
Yeah.
And that's all we can all do. So yeah, that to me, if I was going to try and reset, that helps me, Yeah. And you got to choose it some days. You got to work for it. You got to fight for it.
Doesn't always come easy.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, shoot, life happens. You know how it is. Curveballs.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to close the conversation. So thank you for staying late and taking the time and doing this.
After surf special.
Yeah. Do you have to drive home?
Yeah, I got to stop in Huntington real quick. And actually I'll stop by my mom and dad's and my brother's. I got to pick up some softboards to deliver up to,
Cool. You got a full day.
Yeah. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.